The meeting of two worlds, the natives and the English. In the early 17th century, two completely different worlds collided on the land that would later be known as Virginia, marking the beginning of a series of interactions that would profoundly influence the course of American history. This moment not only heralded the arrival of the English settlers, but also set the stage for centuries of cultural exchange, conflict, and transformation between Native Americans and European colonizers. The first English settlers arrived in Chesapeake in 1607, carrying dreams of a better life and hopes of exploring new territories. But they were not the first to live there. This land had long been home to numerous Native American tribes, led by the skilled chief Powhatan, whom the settlers referred to as Powhatan. A relationship born of necessity. When the English set foot on land, they quickly realized they could not survive on their own. They lacked food, had no knowledge of farming, and faced challenges they had never encountered before. Under these circumstances, Powhatan saw an opportunity for cooperation. With over 30 tribes under his rule, he decided to assist these strangers for two main reasons: they needed help, and they possessed guns, a type of weapon the natives had never seen before. John Smith, one of the colony's leaders, understood the importance of maintaining peace with the natives. He even ordered the settlers not to steal food from the tribes. This initial cooperation benefited both sides. The English received food and survival knowledge, while the natives gained tools and goods from Europe. But peace did not last. Things began to change as the English increasingly encroached on native lands. Cultural differences and conflicting views on land ownership became flashpoints for conflict. The English were accustomed to fencing land and letting livestock roam freely, while the natives considered land a communal resource. The English livestock destroyed native crops, leading to disputes. Trade also brought significant changes to native society. To meet the growing demand for furs from the English, native men spent more time hunting and less time farming. This disrupted traditional social structures, which relied on a balance between the roles of men and women. Over time, these changes eroded the stability of many tribes. The tragedy of Pocahontas. One of the most famous stories of this period is the life of Pocahontas, Powhatan's daughter. In 1613, she was kidnapped by the English and held as a hostage to pressure her father. Eventually, Pocahontas married an Englishman named John Rolfe, converted to Christianity, and was taken to England, where she became a symbol of cultural exchange. However, she died young from illness, a heartbreaking testament to the consequences of the meeting of two worlds. Her story is often romanticized, particularly in popular culture, which tends to depict her as a heroine who willingly embraced European ideals and culture. However, historical accounts reveal a more nuanced reality. Pocahontas played a complex role as both a bridge between vastly different worlds and a young woman caught in the tumultuous tides of colonial expansion. While she is celebrated for fostering understanding between the English and the Powhatan people, her life was also deeply shaped by the power dynamics and injustices of the colonial era, highlighting the duality of her legacy as both a symbol of unity and a victim of exploitation. Her death was not just a personal tragedy, it marked a significant loss for the Powhatan people. Escalating conflicts. After John Smith left the colony due to an injury, relations between the natives and the English rapidly deteriorated. The English reverted to old habits of stealing food and even carrying out massacres. The peak of the conflict was the 1622 uprising led by Pocahontas, Powhatan's brother. The uprising killed hundreds of English settlers but ultimately failed due to the settlers' superior military strength. In 1644, after another rebellion also led by Pocahontas, the remaining natives were forced to sign a treaty, agreeing to relocate to designated areas. This marked the beginning of the reservation system, a painful chapter in Native American history. These agreements were often one-sided, serving primarily to benefit the settlers while further marginalizing native communities. In the north, fierce battles. In New England, the situation was no better. After being helped by the natives to survive their first winter, the Pilgrims celebrated the first Thanksgiving. However, peace was only temporary. In 1637, the Pequot War erupted after an English trader was killed. The English, with the help of rival tribes, attacked a Pequot village, killing over 500 people in a single night of horror. The Pequot War demonstrated the significant challenges native tribes faced against the advancing English settlers. This conflict underscored not only the stark technological and organizational disparities, such as the English use of firearms and fortified strategies, but also the devastating consequences for the Pequot people. After the war, the Pequot population was nearly decimated, with many survivors enslaved or displaced. The war's aftermath further marginalized native tribes in the region, opening vast tracts of land along the Connecticut River to English settlement and setting a grim precedent for future interactions between natives and colonists. The long-term effects included the erosion of intertribal alliances and the loss of territorial sovereignty, laying the groundwork for more aggressive colonial expansion in New England. Despite their clever tactics and bravery, they lacked manpower and modern weapons. After the war, the Pequot were nearly wiped out, and the lands along the Connecticut River were open to English settlement. This set a precedent for future conflicts, where alliances with rival tribes were used to divide and conquer. The last stand, King Philip's War. In 1675, the natives, led by Metacom, also known as King Philip, made a final attempt to push back the English. The war lasted 2 years and caused heavy losses on both sides. The natives attacked more than half of the 90 English towns, completely destroying 12 of them. But ultimately, the disparity in numbers and weaponry determined the outcome. When Metacom was killed, the war ended, and the natives lost their last chance to defend their homeland. Metacom's head was severed and displayed in Plymouth as a grim warning. The aftermath of King Philip's War was devastating for native communities. Entire villages were destroyed, and survivors were often sold into slavery. The war marked the end of organized native resistance in the region. Beyond the battles, cultural displacement. While wars and conflicts dominate the narrative, the cultural impact of colonization was equally profound, touching every aspect of Native American life. Traditional governance structures were undermined, as colonizers imposed foreign systems of authority. Native languages, which carried the essence of tribal identity and history, began to disappear as generations were forced into English-speaking schools. Sacred rituals, once integral to community cohesion and spiritual balance, were banned or lost as conversion to Christianity spread. Even the landscape, revered in native belief systems, was altered beyond recognition, further severing the tribes from their cultural roots. The colonization process was not only a loss of land, but also a profound displacement of identity and heritage. The introduction of European diseases decimated native populations, sometimes wiping out entire tribes. Traditional ways of life were disrupted as tribes were forced to adapt to new economic and social realities. The spread of Christianity further eroded native cultures. Missionaries often sought to civilize native people by converting them to European ways of life. This process, while sometimes well-intentioned, often resulted in the loss of language, traditions, and spiritual practices. The stories of meeting, conflict, and tragedy between the natives and the English are an integral part of American history. They remind us that history is not only written by the victors, but also by those who struggled, endured, and were forgotten. The natives were not just victims in this story, they were people who acted, who tried to protect their lives and culture in the face of relentless encroachment. Although that era has passed, the lessons of respect, understanding, and cooperation between cultures remain relevant. We need to look back at history with fairness and remember that every person and every community deserves to be heard and to exist. By acknowledging the complexities of these historical interactions, we can foster a more inclusive understanding of the past and strive for a future built on mutual respect and coexistence.